Hi, this is Katie Gambill, and I'm with my friend today, Chris Smith. We're here for another episode of Clarksville's Conversation, and we know it's election season, so we're going to do things a little differently, right, Chris?
Yep. We're going to have candidates for each of the city council races, talk about where they stand on key issues in the race.
And today we are meeting with candidates from Ward 4?
Yep, Ward 4.
Ward 4.
All right, and the candidates are Tim Chandler and Wallace Red and Margaret Thompson. And if you want to see a little bit about each of the candidates, you can look at clarksvillenow.com where we have their biographical information and why they're running for office. But let's get right to the issues. We'll start with Tim Chandler. Tim, talk to us about what good growth looks like to you for the city of Clarksville.
Well, growth has always been a stickling point in Clarksville over the last 15 years or so. I think it's very important for us before we start adding new subdivisions and going in and developing large areas, we've got to look at our infrastructure, not just the roadways, but we've also got to look at our fire stations, our police stations. Here about a year or so ago, they wanted us out off of exit 1 area to incorporate about 100 acres into the city limits for development. And one of the things that I did is I went out, we had just built a new fire station there, at the very most a couple of years ago, and talked to the experts, the firemen. Hey, what happens if we take 100 acres and put 200 or 300 more homes in this area? What's it going to look like? And of course, immediately they were alarmed because the growth has been about 30 to 40% more, and then adding on to it. We've got to be extremely careful. There is, we want the growth. Don't get me wrong, but when you start talking about unchecked growth, then you start winding up, and a lot of our growth problems are in areas that are on city streets, city thoroughfares, and any improvement to the roadway is 100% at the taxpayer dollar, city taxpayer dollar. Right now out on Needmore Road and North Whitfield Road, we're looking at a several $1 million improvement in that intersection. We opened it up discussion to the residents. They chose to put a roundabout in, and that was directly associated to continually allowing development and not looking at what we're doing on the infrastructure. We've got to be careful because what we get in revenues on the added property tax, we turn around and lose quadruple in what we have to put into our infrastructure. So, like I said again, I don't want to stifle growth, but I don't want to put growth in to the point where that it's costing us more than what we're taking in.
All right, and Wallace Red, talk to us about what does good growth look like to you?
I think I've still got a little sound problem, but I think it was growth is the question. First, let me just say thank you to Clarksville Now, to you guys for having us on the Zoom thing here. And I'd like to thank all of my opponents. We got 3 very good opponents here in this race. It's going to be hard for our voters here to make up their mind. I'd like to thank all of the candidates that are running this year as well. As you know, Clarksville has been experiencing a tremendous amount of growth over the last 20 years. And that's probably because a lot of it is not just the people that work here. Nashville has had this real estate bubble. The cost of housing and real estate and the rent has gone up tremendously. People are traveling from Nashville to Clarksville to live just because they can't afford the high rent in Nashville. Now, what happens when that bubble bursts? I don't know. Maybe people will decide then, I'm no longer going to make this long drive anymore. One thing is we've come up in 1999 with the a growth development plan. We now have in place the 2040 growth plan. You can see that at the RPC website. But the basic gist of the growth plan that is in place, the 2041, is to use different mixed land use to encourage more compact design. And the millennials today, they're not interested in big yards. They want a more compact design type house where they are together, they're more affordable, and these type of things are being encouraged to have this type of mixed land use. And there's more of today land and housing opportunity choices. And one of the main things that we have as a council person, one of the main strengths that we have is during the budget time. And of course, whenever a development is there and houses are put in that development, there's a lag between the time that the property tax increase will offset the infrastructure cost. So as a council person, we have to make sure during those budget times that we set aside enough funding for the infrastructure to provide for that. Clarksville has got this tremendous growth, and I believe that the council person needs to use and look at the budget wisely because of it.
What does good growth look like? Well, I know Clarksville's growing a lot. I looked at the population in 2017, I looked at the population in 2019, and I'm looking at the census that's going on right now. The population's growing. I'd like to see some more businesses coming to Clarksville, some more technology. I'm looking at the education of the population. It's about 29% of the population has high school diplomas, about 16% with bachelor's degrees, and about 10% have graduate degrees. I think we need some more white collar jobs. We have about 4,000 people who are unemployed in Clarksville. We could bring in some more factories. We have in Ward 4 about 349 new homes going in. And I could see along the Providence area, there's a lot of room for businesses that could go in. There's a lot of room for an improvement in that area. It's a high traffic area. Definitely some room for commerce. Goodness, as far as growth, there's just a lot of room. There's stuff we could do for sure. I'm trying to think of things.
And how about?
That's a broad question.
Yeah. So do you see growth as being a problem in Clarksville, or something that we should push for more of?
I don't see it as a problem. I'd rather see good growth, planned growth. The infrastructure's ready, not necessarily sprawl and we're taking over farmland because we need food, we need water, but prepared growth. I think we're 10 years behind a 10-year problem. And we need to maybe slow it down a little bit and get ready for the growth that's coming, because Nashville is pushing out people and they're coming to the next best thing, or actually the better thing, because I think Clarksville's better than Nashville. And they're coming here because the cost of living is better. We have the jobs, we have the cleanliness. I think just the historic downtown areas is just as cute as could be. And they're coming here and we're not ready for them. Our roads aren't ready. Our public transit is not ready. I think growth is good. I think our economy could use the money, the tax base. We just need to get We just need to get prepared.
A hot topic is always traffic. What do you think? And I'm going to defer to Wallace
Traffic,
first.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Wallace first this time.
Yes.
What do you think should be done to address traffic issues in your ward and across the city? Did you hear me? Did you get that?
Traffic here in Clarksville, of course, that goes hand in hand with growth and a lot of the people that are living here. I will say this, traffic, whenever a development is made, there should be a traffic assessment for most developments that are of a larger size, because it's one of the things that should be looked at carefully. Here in our ward where I live, we have Boot Hill, and at certain times of the day when school is let out, there's a large traffic congestion there going up Boot Hill. And a part of that has to do with the school there, Burns Darden, campaigning door to door. Several people have complained about the traffic there. Several years ago, we had signal guards that were there during the hours when the buses were let out of the school, and they were placed there at Peacher's Mill and Walnut just during that 2 or 3 hour period, and that seemed to have remedied the congestion to a great extent. I believe that we need to go back and look at that again for our ward. The street department is tasked with identifying the streets that could be widened. Pollard Road here in Clarksville, because of the Greenway, has a lot of increased traffic, and it is one of the roads, just because of the sheer length of the road, it has very little curbside, and it really needs to be widened on both sides. I spoke with Representative Jay Reedy not too long ago about the extension of the 101st Parkway. Of course, this is a state road that will go across Dover Road, this extension of the Purple Heart Parkway to link up with the McClure Bridge. And this is better known as going to be the Northern Loop that will loop around Clarksville. This will go a long way to alleviate the traffic that we have here in Clarksville. And my plan is I want to work with the local officials and the state officials to alleviate the traffic here.
There's not one magic answer. There's a lot of things that are going to need to work in unison. I know there are several companies, the state and the federal government, that offer incentives for ride sharing. We can do some improvement on the public transit, and definitely do some improvement on the roads. I think as far as the public transit, we also need to make sure that it has a stigma. I think it has a stigma that it's like a low income, I'm too good to ride the bus type thing, and I think we need to overcome that as well. Developing and refining the park and ride. I know there's not a specialist or a P2 that wouldn't be excited if they road share that they could go to PT 30 minutes later. Just, giving some incentives to ride share.
A very unique situation in Clarksville in that our major arteries are state highways. Mm-hmm. And, we have to operate on the state timeline and the state dollars when it comes to improvement on these roads. When we talk, we don't have that many really and truly what I'll call city streets or side streets that are a major problem. But when I look at it on the traffic situation, it like give the Providence Boulevard as an example. Mr. Red brought that up. There's not any room for us to widen it, and So, about all we can do is, like I said, is play by the state's timeline, the state's dollar. It'd be cost prohibitive to try to come in and widen the Providence Boulevard. Of course, Fort Campbell Boulevard was done not that long ago. When we start talking about our traffic problems, then, yeah, it helps to have traffic studies. I'm chairman of the street department committee, and basically we have kind of, as a rule of thumb, unwritten rule, that anything major, we want to see a traffic study. A prime example is out at exit 8. There's a proposed big truck stop gas station that wants to go out there just before you get to Rossview High School in that area. And one of the things that we have basically demanded is that there's going to have to be signalization put in. There's going to have to be road improvements made on that road. And we don't expect the taxpayer dollars to do that. If you're going to put a business in somewhere and you're going to cause a traffic problem, it's not fair that citizens in this town have to cover those expenses. Now, I'm not saying that the business should cover it at 100%, but they ought to be covering the vast majority of it. Mr. Red brought up a road like Pollard Road. Of course, I grew up in New Providence, and when I was a kid, I've driven that road most all my life, and it never was intended to have. We go back to growth again. That road never was intended to have all that much traffic on it. The yards are there, again, cost prohibitive to come in and try to widen it. So one of the things that we managed to get done is about halfway down, we put a stop sign. The residents, when I was running for office 4 years ago, the residents said, we've been begging for a stop sign there for 10 or 12 years. So I made it one of my priorities. Also down at the far end, and it goes with traffic, at the far end next to the Greenway, there's a farmer down there that could not get his equipment out on weekends because the people happen to park in the road. And so we sat down with him and we looked at it, and he offered to donate the land at his expense to move his cattle fence back out of the way. And now that parking lot is complete, and we've prohibited parking on Pollard Road now. So a lot of times, if we'll just sit back and look at some of the remedies for these problems, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to throw taxpayer dollar at it. Clarksville is growing, busting at the seams, and we just need to be, again, I go back to growth on this. We just need to look at what we're doing and make it smart. The other day, I read a report, and one of the things they were complaining about was, well, do you want people going to Woodlawn? Do you want people moving to Indian Mound? Do you want people moving to Oak Grove? Well, we're eventually going to get to the point where that we are going to wind up with no more property. So, I hate to see us lose inside the city, but then on the other hand, when you start losing money because you're running out of space, and traffic is a major concern. I mean, not a day goes by that I don't get stuck in the traffic with everybody else.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. So what about crime? Let's switch back to Mr. Red. Wallace, what do you think should be done to address crime in Clarksville?
Well, when you look at crime here, currently, I think that for 2020 stats, mostly crime is going down in Clarksville, and in some over the nation. In some parts, crime is going down because of the popularity of the rings and some other electronic devices that people are installing on their front doors. There's some property crime increase that we may be above here in the national average. Here in Clarksville, I'm glad to see that we have the fair policing program that we put in place probably 10 years or so ago. Back when I was on the city council at that time, we were ahead of the curve, and that is a police officer, it bans the chokeholds. It also requires, are you there?
Mhm.
Oh, sorry, my screen went out for a second.
Oh, we can hear you.
It bans the de-escalation. Oh, sorry. And it also, another police officer, he has a duty where he has to intervene if he sees a police officer that he feels like is doing something improper or illegal and he cannot cover for him. But there are 10 basic requirements that they have to participate in. Those are like 3 of the main ones. Another area, a thing that I would like to see, there is a host of non-lethal weapons. The technology is coming about today for non-lethal weapons that can be used. You have the RAP technology for those persons that are on drugs. There are people that may have or that are mentally challenged, and instead of an officer, the first thing he goes for is his sidearm. He can use this RAP to incapacitate someone. There's the M12 bags that can be fired. The pepper balls can now be fired 60 feet away. This is a technology, I think, that we're seeing that should be looked at from police departments, not just here, but all across the nation, because of some incidents that we have seen lately in the news. I like the idea of police officers taking their cars home. I think that's a good idea. It's a deterrent to crime. I believe we could educate people. I'm surprised if I talk to police officers how much crime happens because people just simply are not locking up their valuables, and how many people, I'm told, leave their key in the car with the engine running. They go in the store and they come out, their car is gone. We could, I believe, do a better job in crime prevention and education in Clarksville. And there is a human traffic problem, and it's in Tennessee, and we're not exempt in Montgomery County. If you look at the data, we're right there with everyone else. I believe that there's also a gang problem here in Tennessee as well.
Thank you, Mr. Red. Mr. Chandler, how about you on crime? What do you think should be done to address crime in Clarksville?
Thank you, sir. Well, if anybody knows me, they know where my heart is. I was a police officer for 34 years. And we're seeing an increase in crime. You know, our statistics show, yeah, we're losing a little bit on our statistics as far as property crimes are concerned. But here not too long ago, within the last couple of months, a report was released on murder. And our stats have been going up. And first of all, let me say that this is not a bad reflection on our police department. We have one of the finest police departments in the nation. I'll stand behind them 100%. Hold on a minute. One of our biggest problems right now are the drugs. I lost my great niece to an overdose of heroin laced with fentanyl. And for some reason, we have gotten past the drug culture, and we need to come back and look at that strong again. You know, we just, for years and years, we paid a lot of attention to our drug problem. And I think it's kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit. You know, Mr. Red talked about our police department, and he's 100% right. about they know when to do something, when not to do something. Years ago, I was on the front end of what we come up with called a use of force continuum. And to be able to use force, you cannot escalate force above what the perpetrator is doing. In other words, if the perpetrator is not shooting, is not deadly force, then you cannot escalate it to deadly force. You must go tick for tack. And that's why it's called a use of force continuum. It can go up, it can go down. Our police department is doing a great job at using this. Again, we go back to, we're not the sleepy little town we were back in the 60s and the 70s. We have a large population increase. And of course, with that will come in the criminal element. And, how many of us get a phone call every day, somebody trying to scam you out of your credit card numbers and things like that? You're always going to have the criminal element out there that preys on the general population. And we just got to make sure, again, like I said, our police department is a great police department. We need to make sure as a city council that we continue to arm them with the tools that they need. We've been using less lethal, like the bean bags, the taser gun, and things like that. And over 34 years, I saw a lot of these things come and go. I did see a report the other day, and they were talking about less lethal options. But I heard a professor from a university make the statement that there's no such thing as less lethal. Everything, when you fire a beanbag out of a shotgun, when you fire a rubber bullet, when you fire the pellet balls, there's always a potential for death. So again, I go back to great police department, great group of people, and we need to continue as a city council and the citizens of this town to back them.
I actually went to the FBI database and looked up some of the crime rates, and unfortunately, Clarksville is probably higher than the state average. It doesn't seem like it. I don't know.
Is there anything that stands out?
Tennessee's number 4 in domestic violence murder in the country. And Clarksville's a heavy contributor to it. And when you look at it, we have one domestic violence shelter and it stays full. And I used to be a victim advocate on Fort Campbell, and the process of getting someone placed is tedious and it's difficult. When I called and asked them where they were on creating new space, they're working on it. They're looking at 28 new beds, a new facility. But it's in the distant future, not far distant, but they're working on it. It's in place, but it's still a whole build away. But given that, when domestic violence occurs, if there's no place to go, you stay. I mean, you're not going to take your kids and be homeless, especially if you're a military and your nearest family is 1,000 miles away. And then when there's no place to go, I mean, it occurs, it reoccurs, and then eventually it's a tragedy. As far as crime, expanding using the drug court, I know Judge Grimes does a lot of good things, but that has statistically proven to reduce crime, helping ex-offenders, so when people do get out of prison, do get out of jail, helping them secure a living wage. I know the average living wage, the average wage for Clarksville is $20.50, or about $47,000 per year. So helping them get a job and having a place to live, that way they don't reoffend, connecting them to stable housing if they have a place to live and something to a home base, something to hold on to. That also is a deterrent for recidivism. Monitoring and public surveillance. So if, like I said, the cameras that are already in place, if somebody's actually looking at them, it's a deterrent. Youth activities. For the life of me, The people who are going through the unlocked cars, I know are children. They're kids. I work with kids every day. That is what kids do. There is nothing for these kids to do. There's 3 community centers. The community centers are doing the best they can. But where I live, the nearest community center is Kleeman, and there's not a sidewalk or a safe way for the kids to get there. And I know some of the other wards, is very similar, like Ward 8 and Ward 5, West Creek, the bus doesn't even go by West Creek. Sorry. There's no way for the kids to get there. So providing youth activity is going to deter some of those property crimes for sure. Fixing up some of the abandoned buildings. There's something called the bystander effects or pluralistic ignorance or diffusion of responsibility. The pluralistic ignorance is, when it becomes, people become immune to it. Like when you drive down Providence and that one spot where all the washer and dryers have been sitting out there so long that people are just like, that's just the way it is. When you clean that up, people look at it and go, oh, well, it looks nice. Let's keep it that way. So when somebody else cares, then the next person cares, and the next person cares, as opposed to the diffusion of responsibility. Well, that's a problem. The next person will take care of it. The next person will take care of it. It's kind of a psychological effect where it's psychological.
Well, we want to thank everyone for joining us on Clarksville's Conversation. And we want to remind the people watching that if you want more information about the candidates, there's a article on ClarksvilleNow.com that has their bios and stuff. And I think I speak for all 3 of us when I say that we genuinely appreciate what you guys do for the community and that you're wanting to take an active role in trying to change things. And we just appreciate you, your willingness to serve. So thank you very much.